In this unit, we'll be studying national politics, what it looked like, and some problems that were faced by the presidents of the last 1/3 of the 19th century. Some of the objectives for this unit are: so let's begin. Party politics, definitely a study in contrast, night and day, just about. Party membership is very important. Passionate loyalty to their party is very important, but the party membership is based on mainly family, or and also regional, I should say. They're members of the party because their parents are the members of the party, or they're members of the party because of where they live, not because of what it's going to do for the national economy or what's good for the economy. It's more of what's good for the region, or, well, this is just how we've always done it. The parties are divided internally. For example, within the stalwart party, we see the groups developing known as stalwarts and half-breeds. The stalwarts were very much in favor of keeping power through patronage. Patronage is the handing over or giving of government jobs based on some assistance that was given maybe during an election. So a governor of a state gets elected. He's elected because somebody gave him tons of money. Well, the person who gave out the money is then appointed to a lower level, maybe a local position in the post office, or maybe a sheriff or something along those lines. The other group is the half-breeds. They were opposed to patronage system. They wanted reform, but they were not above using patronage to gain power over the stalwarts. Again, studying contrast, national government wins the Civil War, but our national government is too weak to reconstruct the South. Too many differences about just exactly how it should be done. We have Lincoln's plan that fails with the death of Lincoln. We have Johnson's plan that fails when Congress tries to impeach Johnson, and then congressional plan failed because it wasn't really a plan to fix the South. It was a plan to punish the South even more. Another study in contrasts in regards to women. Women can't vote, as well as many African American men and poor whites in the South, not given their rights to vote. But yet we see among white adult landowning males between 1860 and 1900, 78% turn out on a regular basis for presidential elections, and 60 to 80% turn out for congressional elections. Tons more than what we see today. At best, I think we got up to 60% in our most recent election, maybe. Here's, again, focusing on this objective of a study in contrast. What a woman may be and yet not have. She can be a mayor, she can be a nurse, a mother, a doctor, a teacher, a factory, but she can't vote. What a man can be and still have the vote or not lose the vote. He can be a convict, a lunatic, a slave owner, unfit for military service. I believe what that means. He can be an alcoholic, and yet the vote's not taken away from him. Upstanding people, hardworking, dedicated to the family, no vote. Do whatever they want, treat anybody else the way they want, worse than themselves, or make them feel like they're superior to everybody, and they have the vote. Definitely a contrast. Women do play a major role in politics, despite their lack of ability to vote. They found ways to influence public policy, especially in regards to groups that they belong to, like the abolitionist group. And then once slavery ends, women find other groups to become involved with, specifically temperance and other things dealing with family, child labor, things along those lines. Now, women have been given this role, what we call the cult of domesticity. It is the belief that the women's role is in the home. They're the maternal ones. They're the ones who take care of the family, teach the kids, educate everybody, do the job of the woman, as has been tradition. Women take that and run with it. We are the ones who've been raising the children, teaching young boys how to become good men. So why would we not use that exact same style and same methods in our political lives and our right to vote? Look how much we could do well, the women say, because of this. Again, party membership is based on regional impacts. The Republicans typically from the north, typically old money bankers, industrialists, and tend to be typically Protestant, while the Democrats are from the South and the West, typically poor, typically Catholic. There's a big question on what it means to be American. The immigrants coming in are coming to be American. The old immigrants around 1820 wanted to be purely American. The new immigrants coming in want to enjoy the benefits of being American while retaining some of their old ways. But what brought them here? Well, the dream of becoming American. We see in office the Republicans take on these issues of temperance, but they approach it as a moral issue. And here's what we're focusing on as far as the ethno-cultural issues. Drinking in some cultures is just common. It's a regular event. It's not seen as any immoral act. It's just this is the way things are. But the Republican Protestants take on this issue, this moral issue, and say that it's the government job to limit drinking laws and set limitations on alcohol and the availability of alcohol. Catholics and Irish take this as a personal attack because they were raised with it in their family. It's been around. It's not something that's taboo that people sneak outside to partake in. So they take this as a personal attack, and then the Democrats, again, the Catholic and Irish being mainly Democrat, follow their lead and then apply it politically to fight that battle, being opposed to temperance laws. So what does it mean to be American? We're going to take a little side road here, a little time out. No objectives here, but what brought those immigrants to the United States? The idea of being American and chasing the American dream. So a few adjectives about what it means to be an American. Just real quick, you can read there. Feel free to pause and go back if you need to. James Truslow Adams, in his book The American Dream, is the first person, or I don't know if he's the first person, he's obviously not the first person to use the phrase, but he popularized the phrase. There's always been also the American dream, that the dream of a land in which life should be better and richer and fuller for every man, with the opportunity for each according to his own ability or achievement. Come to America, make your life as great as you want it to be. Only in America can you do that. That's what brought the immigrants to the country. You can leave your old life behind. You can start a new life and be a millionaire, king of your own castle. Jump ahead to 2010, just a few years ago. A majority of Americans no longer feel the American dream is based on material goods, but rather they find the American dream in spiritual happiness or by surrounding themselves with family. Very few now believe that you can achieve the American dream through hard work and determination, and that the American dream is going to be even more difficult for their children or their children's children. So let's focus on something we can attain, and that's spiritual happiness and happiness within our own family. That has become the new American dream. There are 4 consumer cultures, or rather 4 dreams, I should say, of the consumer culture. The dream of abundance, dream of democracy of goods, dream of freedom of choice, dream of novelty. You can see that they all 4 have in common some kind of dream, obviously. The dream of abundance is having material goods. Basically, it's for the richest of society. Democracy of goods, everybody has the same products, regardless of class, regardless of where you came from. Freedom of choice, the variety of goods allowed people to their fashion and their own particular lifestyle. If you want a Timex versus some other fancy brand of watch, you have that because there's a variety out there. And then the dream of novelty, ever-changing fashions, always broadening, always widening, always giving the consumer new experiences in their availability on the market. So this new consumer culture obviously is focusing on the goods that are available to the Americans. Now we see the spread of this consumer culture from the inside out. The news starts reaching isolated towns like small towns here, as you see in Mississippi. The idea that you are not forced, you don't have to settle for your small local general store. You can get out. Industrial activities such as the Ford Model T automobile allows people to expand and travel. So, today we don't think anything about it. We hop in our cars and we go to the Battlefield Mall, or we drive down to Joplin, or we go up to Kansas City. We don't think anything about it at all. I mean, if we want something, we drive, we go get it. That's not the way it's always been. And I think sometimes we forget that. So for African Americans in the South, they're able to move or maybe get a lift somewhere, and then that idea of going to another town to buy something fancy expands, and now they say, well, why can't we just move out of town? Period. Let's go to a bigger city and let's see what we can find there. Let's see what we can do with our lives in the big cities. And so we see this migration occurring out of the Deep South, and they settle in pockets around Memphis, and then we see a move north to St. Louis, and then we see more movement north up to Detroit, and then we see movement even into the east into New York City, in the major metropolitan areas on the East Coast. Home ownership has always been seen as a status symbol. You own your home, you finally made it, so to speak. It's the way to separate the middle class from the poor. Back to now our regular lesson. In government, the issue becomes, what is the role of the government in controlling behavior? And the debate goes back and forth between Republicans and Democrats. How much power can the government have? Now remember, we're at a time when we're moving out of the laissez-faire type government. That kind of comes to an end around 1900. One issue is blue laws. Blue laws deal with alcohol. Do we sell alcohol on Sundays? Or if we do, what time do we start selling? When do we stop selling? Do we allow it on Wednesdays? Wednesday's church, I don't know how many people still attend Wednesday church, but that used to be a norm. You go to church 2 times a day on Sunday, and you go to church on Wednesdays. Not that the government controlled that, but the people in the city control the local government. And then just the same question, just on the local level: how much government control should the local government have? We'll talk about Republicans and Democrats in just a second, but this is just one example, one area in which they were debating on how much government control. And then also compulsory education. You guys are sitting in a classroom today because laws have dictated that you have to. That's what we call compulsory education. Back at the beginning of the industrial era, children didn't have to go to school. There were no child labor laws. Children actually were forced to work just to help make the family make it. So those two issues, compulsory education and blue laws, how do they deal with it? Let's look at the Democrats. The Democrats believe in states' rights and individual freedoms. So if you go back to blue laws, states' rights and individual freedoms would dictate that the state would then control whether or not they just let the state decide the laws for alcohol, and they would encourage individual freedom. So if an individual wants to have alcohol, then the individual has alcohol. State rights and individual freedom on compulsory education, it's not the federal government's decision, it's the state's decision to decide their laws for education. And then Republicans believe in federal supremacy. That means a strong central government, and the Republicans have no problem using government to compel moral behavior. So if you go back to the blue laws, it's the government's job to dictate for the nation when and how long alcohol would be sold, and it's the federal government's decisions to decide when and how long children would go to school. Again, that would be the Republican view of those two issues. As we continue to move on, the federal government is obviously weak. They're not really concerned with making any major decisions, and from probably 1860 to, basically 1900, no major activity occurs. There's no major laws. There's nothing. They're not concerned with making any major decisions. Their only concern is staying in power, and again, they do that through the patronage system. With a little help of the political machine, you get appointed to maybe jobs in the political machine because of patronage. Again, letter A here, the ideology of the government at the time was hands off, just stay out of the way. We will regulate business by staying out of business. Also, industrial types were driven by this theory of social Darwinism, that the strongest businesses survive without government involvement. Again, the study in contrast, we can bring that back. The capitalists don't want government involvement, but they want high tariffs, which protect American-made goods. They want the government to stay out of their way, but help them with the high tariffs. But then on the flip side, when the needy are asking the government for help, the capitalists are the first one to step up and say, no, that's not the government's role. We need to stay out, so no bailouts. Common theme among the people, especially Democrats, that the Congress is too big and too out of control, undisciplined, they say. Objective 2, we're talking about patronage. I mentioned that a few times. Patronage, again, is the giving of government jobs for assisting someone in the election process. Presidents have problems with patronage, and these three presidents feel like it's their duty to do something about it. Hayes attempts, but he can't make anybody happy. Garfield tries, but he dies too soon. And Arthur is somewhat successful. When Hayes is elected, remember, he's the one who gets elected in 1877 through the compromise, that behind the closed door deal between Republicans and Democrats. Hayes is elected, and Republicans pull the military out of the South, basically ending Reconstruction. So when Hayes steps in, he's concerned with the patronage that's been going on in the Republican Party, focuses in on New York City, sets up an investigation, and finds that the political machine is corrupt. I mean, duh, you don't need to investigate that. That's just obvious. The political boss at the time was Roscoe Conkling, and he was taken down along with a few other upper-level people. Unfortunately for Hayes and Republican Party, that begins the downfall of the Republican control in government, in Congress, especially in New York. Because as soon as the Republican political machine is knocked down by the Republican president, the Democrats take over. The people look at this and say, all that's going on? Well, the Republicans are corrupt, so let's vote for Democrats. So they vote for Democrats, and the Democrat machine gets established. And then we see Boss Tweed doing the exact same thing. Again, we found that from our last unit, the city life in the political machine. Boss Tweed is probably even more corrupt than Conkling. Hayes only runs for one term, and the Republicans come up with Garfield. Again, the issue of patronage comes up, and within the Republican Party, we have disputes, and it's almost bad enough to rip the party apart. So what the leaders of the Republican Party decide is to nominate not a stalwart, a half-breed for president and a stalwart for vice president. Well, that stalwart happened to be Chester A. Arthur. Garfield, being the half-breed, a reformer. That's what half-breeds mean, not anything else. He's a reformer. He wants to eliminate the patronage system. And actually, this time Garfield has a plan, but as you know, Hayes did not. Garfield's plan is a civil service system where you have to pass a test to prove your qualifications for the job that you're applying for. It's a merit test. To keep the entire Republican Party happy, they nominate Chester Arthur, who is a stalwart in favor of patronage, as the vice president, and because of that, Garfield gets the nomination and Republicans win the presidency. Unfortunately, Garfield is shot by someone who claims that he should have been given a job by Garfield. I voted for you. You're supposed to give me a job. So that's what patronage does. Arthur takes over, and the stalwarts rejoice because they believe that now they're going to see, the return to the good old days and the good old boy system, and they're going to start reaping benefits and having cash in their pockets and getting kickbacks. Well, Arthur kind of reverses the role against the stalwarts because of, I don't know if he just had a little heart-to-heart or a moral decision was made, but he decides to continue Garfield's reform policy, and he sees the passage of the Pendleton Civil Service Act through to the end. Again, that's the act that does require everyone to pass a test in order to show that they are qualified for the job in which they are applying. Several acts are passed during this time, although none of them really are reinforced because to be honest, no one is willing to stand up to the big businesses, specifically the railroads. The railroads were given a lot of power through land grants, and they were establishing monopolies and gaining friends, large-scale investors. The two acts that we're talking about is the Interstate Commerce Act. And the Interstate Commerce Act is the first act that shows any kind of government regulation. The story behind this, the way this plays out, MUN is an owner-operator of a storage facility in which farmers from the Midwest bring their or take their crop to him to store until it's sold, and then it gets transported out off on the railroad. Well, MUN was charging whatever prices he wanted because, again, there was no regulation of prices. And large-time bonanza farmers, he would give a cut rate deal because he was going to be getting some kickbacks from that, while small-time individual family farmers who tried to sell their excess, they were being charged excessively high prices because, well, he can. Again, there's just no regulation. So he's finally taken to court. It goes all the way to the Illinois State Supreme Court. And the Illinois State Supreme Court fined in favor of the farmer. And they set the law that states that you cannot charge above a certain amount. You can charge up to that amount. What he can charge is still up to him, so he can still charge a low rate for bonanza farmers, but no excessively high prices. And when MUN tries to claim that their state Supreme Court has taken away his due process in regards to the money that he could earn, and that is obviously turned down. It does. The government does get involved, and to the small-time farmers' surprise and dismay, the federal government reverses MUN versus Illinois and says no. States cannot regulate this because it's an interstate business. Meaning the business goes from one state to another. So MUN rejoices. Well, now that was 1886. Immediately, the very next year, the government comes back and says, let's clarify this. The states cannot regulate interstate business, but the federal government can, and that's what the Act of 1887 does. The federal government takes into their power the right to regulate interstate commerce. So they do uphold the findings and the decision in the MUN versus Illinois case. The only difference is that they put all the power in the hands of the federal government. In the Sherman Antitrust Act, this is not necessarily specifically toward Rockefeller, although he was affected a lot by it. Essentially, it states that you can't form trusts to control or make a monopoly in the market. In the case of Rockefeller, Rockefeller and 3 or 4 other companies joined together, and they all decided to sell their prices of their oil all at the same level. On a side note, Rockefeller then began selling his oil at a much lower rate, and then he was able to gain control of the Standard Oil Trust. But back to the original trust itself, the Standard Oil Trust. So all 4 of the companies are selling their oil at the same price. Well, to the consumer, that's essentially the same thing as a monopoly, because no matter who you're going to buy from, you're going to pay this high price. So the government steps in and says all trusts are illegal. All trusts that hurt the economy are illegal. Unfortunately for the federal government, and fortunately for big business, the government never really clearly defines what a trust is. So the laws, the Interstate Commerce Act and the Sherman Antitrust Act, really have no teeth, so to speak. They really don't go after anybody. It's simply a way to say, well, look what we did. We tried to pass a law, so leave us alone. We're trying. Again, this is a time of a very weak and inactive government. These 2 laws really do not have any kind of effect until someone gets into the presidency who is not afraid of big business, and that person is Teddy Roosevelt. Roosevelt made it very clear that when he became elected, he was only going to serve his 1 term and then he's done. So immediately, by saying that, big business does not have anything to hold over him. They have no sway toward him. Essentially, there's no way to bribe him to look the other way. So he does really take on and tackle big business in that way. And that is the end of the unit. Guys, thank you, and have a good day.